stop-start system. G'day, I'm Paul. It is wet and I'm in a V12 Ferrari. I am in the new Ferrari 12-cylinder, or in Italian, in my terrible Italian, the 12 Cilindri. It is basically a replacement for the 812 Superfast. Today, I'm going to give you as much information as I can on this about the international launch. It is wet. I'm scared because it's rear-wheel drive, naturally aspirated V12, a lot of horsepower, and it's wet. So we will see how all that goes. We're going to stop at some point when it does dry up, run you through the outside, I'll run you through the high-level specs. We're going to get to some twisties soon as well, and depending on how dry it is, I'll try and give you some exhaust note too. I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to run you through as much of this as raw as I can. Unfortunately, all of the B-roll, which is the footage they shoot ahead of these events, is probably all going to be dry and doesn't match anything that you see. But anyway, it is what it is. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this video, you can use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can use the chapters below. But wish me luck, it is bucketing down. Let's get started. Okay, so what is it like to drive? This is kind of a pussycat supercar in the sense that they've designed it to be nice and gentle, nice and soft, but a bit of an animal when it's unleashed. I'll be doing the nice and gentle, nice and soft to start with because it is sopping wet outside. And I obviously don't want to have 600 kilowatts of rear-wheel drive end up in the trees anywhere. So I'm just going to be taking it easy for the moment until we get to some twisties and I can sort of wind it up a bit. I've got it here in the wet setting on the Manatino switch. So this basically is the softest setting for this car, and it manages wheel slip and really accommodates for these types of driving conditions, because I can't overestimate enough how much power and torque you're trying to send through and we've got standing water there as well. I can't sort of overestimate how much power and torque you're trying to send through two rear wheels. And there is a limit on how much traction you can get, even out of these sort of specially developed tires by Goodyear and Michelin. You still have limitations to what you can do with it, but this setting really does straddle that balance between giving you confidence behind the wheel, but also still giving you the ability to give it some if you really want to. So this has primarily been designed as a daily, as a cruiser, and like straight out of the box here, it feels exactly like that. The suspension is so comfortable. Like you would never expect a car that's sitting on 21-inch alloy wheels and fairly low profile tires to have a ride as comfortable as this. It is just remarkably good. So you've got adaptive damping, and that adaptive damping really softens everything up for a road like this. It's a country road, it's got some corrugations, a couple of potholes, and that standing water situation. They've got very light steering as well here in this wet setting, so it really is quite communicative and light. You're really not sort of getting too much of a vibe out of it, because you don't need to have a vibe when you're traveling at low speeds, and it's not overly heavy or complicated for tasks like parking or anything like that. Screen ahead of the driver. This is interesting. So as we're driving here, it's giving me all the critical information that I need. It is a little bit complicated with all of these buttons and stuff on the steering wheel, because you activate and move through screens using these buttons. So you've got shortcuts on the left-hand side here, and then on the right-hand side, you've got the ability to move between the different view settings that you have. So from that point of view, it is a little bit fiddly, but according to Ferrari, and obviously haven't quizzed any owners on this, but according to Ferrari, owners get used to it eventually and it's fine. But should you really settle for a system that you have to, eventually get used to and it's fine? I think that they've tried to make the best of, putting everything here on the steering wheel, but I just wonder if it's a step too far. The indicators I'm fine with, but yeah, I just wonder if it's a bit too much. If you are a Ferrari owner watching this, let me know in the comments section below. Do you find this sort of stuff annoying, or would you prefer that they just have physical buttons and switches for everything? Let me know down there. So the other fascinating thing is the brake-by-wire system and the brake pedal feel. It's something that's been used quite widely through electric cars, and it's one of the things that we've unearthed with older electric cars that don't have this system when we're testing them on our ride and handling track at the proving ground. If you do end up in a scenario where you basically are on the brakes and you hit something like a set of tram lines or a pothole into a corner, you go to the point where you lose regen and the brake pedal feel is uneven and it's very sloppy. Whereas this brake-by-wire system gives you totally consistent brake pedal feel regardless of what is happening with the vehicle. So it can be under a full sort of ABS condition and it will still be giving you proper brake pedal feel without any dramas. So I think that's a critical thing here that they're implementing in a lot of high-end cars, because you can effectively just pound the brake pedal constantly when you're on the track and it will always manage the feel on the brake pedal. You're never going to be in a situation where it feels funny because ABS is triggered. So it's a good system, and they've basically tuned it here so you have extended pedal travel. Now, what I mean by that is that in 296, for example, it's a short pedal, it's a sharp pedal. You're feeling everything that's going on there, whereas this, it's a longer pedal travel and it's just a bit more relaxed. It doesn't feel sort of as bitey or as sporty as some of those high-end Ferraris, which is definitely a good thing. Got a stop-start system. There you go, this is all part of that emissions control stuff. So for Ferrari to be able to get to the point where they could actually offer a V12 engine in this day and age, they actually had to do a lot to this to make it work. So the catalytic converter has had a complete overhaul, has a petrol particulate filter now. A lot of engine management controls have been changed as well, just to make sure that this fits in with all the latest Euro 6 compliance requirements, the Chinese cycle. I mean, there are so many complications now to selling a car that you have to actually meet. It's just insane. Okay, enough about wet mode. I'm just gonna have to switch it over to sport. So sport basically changes the car's characteristics, but you can push the Manettino switch as well to go into bumpy road, which is like a softer setting for sport too as the rain starts coming down once again. I'm gonna put it into manual shift just by flicking this little switch here. That's a launch control switch, that's your reverse. And then we're gonna be using our paddle shifters here. Let's hear this engine sing a little bit. So yeah, I've probably said this 1,000 times. This video is kind of all over the place, but 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12. That is what it sounds like. And that is with a 9,500 RPM limit. I'm just gonna find a straighter stretch here. Let it go all the way through to 9,500 so you can have a bit of a listen, because it is quite something. They've basically made the engine so far back that the back of it is just here. Okay, here we go. That sounds insane, absolutely insane. It is so wet. I'm driving like with my fingertips here because I'm just so concerned about it stepping out sideways on me, but you know what, it feels really manageable, and it's actually not as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. There are stages there where you hit those bumps mid-corner and the back sort of slips out a little bit, but I mean, wow, this is quite something. Oh. The noise is ridiculous. All right, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit, have a listen to some of the sound that is going to come out of this. As we hit a wet patch on the road here. Have a listen to some of the sound that's coming out of the exhaust of this, and then I'll compare it to the 812C, which we used in a recent drag race. I'll be quiet, have a listen, and enjoy. This is something else. Look, it is absolutely sopping wet here, and I'm not driving anywhere near this car's limits for obvious reasons, but what I am feeling here is a car that is so incredibly capable. It just doesn't feel big. It's so weird. Despite it being a V12 coupe, it does not feel big here behind the wheel. Everything is nice and smooth. Steering feels great. Even though it is quite light, there is decent communication through the wheel. The brakes are fantastic with that brake-by-wire system. It actually does a really good job of communicating what's going on, because I can even get to this point here, slam the brakes on, and you still have so much traction before you're actually slipping. But even when it enters ABS, the pedal doesn't do any funny stuff. Everything just feels exactly like it should. Nothing is out of the ordinary or weird. So it is something else. So basically what they were able to do to allow this To allow this to spin up to 9,500 RPM, they were able to basically make some tweaks to the engine. This F140 engine has been around for such a long time, but they've just refined it bit by bit. So we're talking about titanium conrods, which are 40% lighter than the previous generation. Rebalanced crankshaft as well, which is 3% lighter. So all of these minor improvements have allowed them to just make this engine sing even more. And it moves from 0 to 9,500 RPM. 12-cylinder engine, and it just sounds so good. Basically, the header pipes are all equal length as well. They've tried to just get as much as they can out of this engine and the packaging to get that sort of hollow bellow noise that this makes when it's accelerating. It is such a unique Ferrari sound, and they've been able to achieve it here, even with all of the silly nannies we have to have for emissions controls on a vehicle like this. It is quite something else. So I'm glad I found that little stretch of road there and got to give it a little blat, but I just wish it was dry. It would have just been epic. But yeah, here in the wet, I mean, this thing, it corners like it's on rails, even when it is sopping wet. Absolutely remarkable stuff.
Now, let's talk about the racetrack. And it's not actually a racetrack that we went to. It is a proving ground in Luxembourg that Goodyear uses to develop tyres. This is one of the first Ferraris Goodyear has actually supplied tyres for quite some time, and they showed us the development process, including what I reckon is one of the coolest racing sims you're ever going to see. This basically allows them to test all of the tyre properties and compounds before they develop the tyre itself for tender approval by Ferrari. The racetrack they used for the simulator is Ferrari's test track in Maranello called Fiorano. It had the 12-cylinder loaded up and all of the tyre properties that they did eventually submit to Ferrari for tender approval. It was such a cool experience to see what they actually go through to develop these tyres. But then it was on to the actual racetrack. I had some solo time on my own. Being wet, I was pretty ginger with the throttle. And that was until we jumped into the passenger seat with one of Ferrari's unhinged race drivers, who managed to then light up the rears on what was virtually a sopping wet track to give me one of the coolest passenger rides I've ever experienced. Now that is enough about the racetrack and driving. Let's have a closer look of the 12-cylinder on the outside.
So this has been inspired by the Daytona, and that's where you get some of this traditional styling from. You've got this black section down the front here, and it's matched with a black section at the rear. And one of the interesting things is, while Ferrari loves you personalizing their cars and making them your own, it's stuff like this in the back section you won't be able to change. That will stay black. So if it's a black car, it'll kind of look nice, it'll be fine. But if it's a different colored car, like this sort of gold bronzy color they have here, that's really going to stand out a lot. You can always wrap it or do something, but you know, it's not exactly the end of the world. Compared to the 812, which this is the replacement for, it sits on a new platform that's actually slightly shorter in terms of the wheelbase. Down the front here, you've also got this section that is kind of protruding from the body, and that features an LED light, and it's just a really interesting design element because you don't often see parts like this that stick outside of the body. Even aero elements like this that stick out on the side here are totally different. And then if you have a look down the front here, you've got so much aero, but also so much cooling as well. This engine needs a lot of cooling for not only the engine itself, but all the auxiliary components. So in here, you've got radiators and other heat exchangers that basically air passes through, gets rejected out the bonnet there. You've also got areas off to the side here as well that cool the brakes. So the air passes through here and behind the body to the brakes as well. Around the side, you've got two sets of wheels you can choose from. There is no carbon fiber option here, but this is a 21-inch alloy wheel, and just have a look at the design there. So you've got that machine finish on the outside, a piano black in the center there, massive set of carbon ceramic brakes there as well with a Brembo stopper. This is capable of doing over 300 kilometers an hour, so a set of brakes like that is going to be important for pulling this up. The interesting thing as well is there's two sets of tires. So Michelin and Goodyear have developed tires specifically for this vehicle. This is currently on Michelin's for the road section. We are going to be doing a track thing later on Goodyear's. So this is the Pilot Sport S5. So pretty good tire, but for wet weather driving, we'll find out pretty shortly. You've also got this section here that sticks out a little bit, similar to the front there. Ferrari logo there too, that looks beautiful on the side. Wing mirrors stick out heaps as well. You'll notice you know, when you're driving this vehicle, it has a lot of width to it and it is quite imposing, but you know, it looks tiny here when it's sitting next to you, but it is quite a wide vehicle. Now around the side here, these door handles, basically it has an electronic release, so you put your hand in there, push that up, that releases the door, and then you can basically pop it in slowly, it sucks it in. Carbon fiber down the bottom there as well. This car has a stack of options fitted to it, so inside the cabin, it is carbon fiber galore, including down the sides there as well, so it is all over the place. Have have a look at these rear wheels too. So 315 mil wide. This is naturally aspirated V12 rear wheel drive. It needs as much traction as it can get on the rear. So it is an important element of this entire package, with an enormous set of stoppers on the rear as well. And that also includes carbon ceramics on the back too. So it is a proper setup for fast driving. Now come around to the back with me. I want to show you this. This is quite a sort of special looking rear because it has a number of elements here that are designed specifically for the purposes of aero. This incredible diffuser sits out the back of the car, and it's got two elements to it. Beneath the vehicle you have vortex generators that are used not only on fast vehicles like this but in planes as well. And the setup at the rear here is basically designed for two things. One is to create a disruptive airflow out the rear. Second part, which is these bits here, is to actually create a smooth airflow up the back that meets this spoiler and then gets rejected. This is all important because these sections here pop up at speeds of above 60 k's an hour, both for the purpose of downforce and slowing the vehicle down as well. When we talk downforce, it comes at the cost of drag too, and they've tried to minimize that as much as possible with this diffuser at the rear. This is designed to basically add 50 kilos of extra downforce at around 200 kilometers an hour, just to make sure that when you are sending that much power and torque to the rear axle, it is pushing it down as much as it possibly can. This section doesn't move though, so it's only these parts here that lift up. LED taillights along the back here as well with that center section. Another Ferrari logo there too. And then you've got those big exhaust pipes down the back there as well that really just give this some incredible presence. So it is quite a cool looking car on the outside. If I did miss anything, I actually did a detailed walk around of this as a static vehicle. I'm going to leave a link for that in the description below. Now, I want to show you the boot. This is what the key looks like. Absolutely stunning looking key. So you've got a boot release just down here, powered tailgate. The other cool thing as well is that you actually have a charger up here. So you can just plug the Ferrari charger up to there to make sure your 12-volt starter battery is always ready to rumble. Really usable boot too. So you've got that storage inside the cabin, but actually quite a generous space there within the boot for a vehicle this size relative to its performance. Big subwoofer down there as well, and your options list. So all the road cars on this launch program are really heavily optioned. You can see there it's kind of a never-ending list of bits and pieces they've added to the vehicle. And then you also have storage behind the driver and the front passenger seat too. So it is a pretty sort of well-equipped space there if you do need to actually store things. Now, I forgot to show you this. This is probably the best part of the whole package. It is what it looks like when the bonnet's open. So it's got that clamshell that opens forwards, and I mean, just have a look at this. You've got exposed suspension components under there. You can see that full tyre. I mean, it is just such a cool setup. So much carbon fibre there as well that's exposed. You've got the chassis number, and then of course you've got the F140. Have a look at that. Look how far back it sits as well. That is nestled right under there, which means that it basically sits all the way down to here. So it is just such a remarkable looking setup. 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12, and quite a showpiece as well if you do want to crack the bonnet open for people to have a bit of a look. Now let's have a quick look at this interior. So you think modern Ferrari and it needs to have modern technology, and I think that's what they've tried to really achieve here, and they've done it in a bit of a minimalist way. There's no big iPads sitting on the dashboard. It is quite a sort of reduced method of showing you what you need to show, but still having some of the creature comforts that you need as a daily driver. So head of the driver, you have a screen that's just under 16 inches in size. So big display, gives you all of your critical information. And the thing I love about this is if you are going to go to the track, you are going to have fun with this. You actually have sections up here that show you how warm the car is, not only from an engine point of view, but from brakes and tires as well, which is important. Big old paddle shifters here to change gears, so made out of carbon fibre. When it comes to personalisation, you can really change everything in here, from the stitching to the colours of the leather, the seats. You can go for race seats, you can go for massage. You really have a number of different options there to pick from. Central to the cabin is a 10.25 inch display, so this has your smartphone mirroring and all your critical controls. Passenger also gets a little display as well, so it's an 8.8 inch display that allows you to flick between different settings, change the audio system, and sort of play around with some of those functions. Beneath that though, you have a really usable glove box, and I think that's part of the impressive thing in this car. You have usable storage from the glove box to this center console. You've got a phone charger, a cup holder, so they really have thought about everything in terms of making this easy to use. And I love the fact that you have a window up here as well. It's kind of like a sunroof without having a sunroof, so it is a sort of very good feature to have. Okay, so our time with the 12-cylinder is up, unfortunately. I had such a fun day. Today has been absolutely unreal. Despite the weather, I was genuinely a bit mortified at the concept of having to drive this, a V12 rear-wheel drive Ferrari, in the wet on the wrong side of the road, but actually ended up all being really well. It was just so much fun to drive and so much fun on the track as well. I forgot to mention pricing. So it's going to start at just over $800,000 in Australia. That is for the coupe version. There is a convertible coming as well that is going to be slightly more expensive. So it is a big chunk of change, but if you have a look at the brief for this car, GT, it does exactly that. It is so smooth and comfortable to drive in and around the city. On the freeway, it's smooth. It's got all the creature comforts, all the bells and whistles that you need. And then when you want to unleash on it, it is happy to unleash. And surprisingly, even in the sopping wet conditions today, there was still stacks of traction, and you've got 315mm wide tyres on the rear, times 2. So it is a lot that you have to overcome to lose traction, and it really handled it quite beautifully. So from that point of view, that was great. The driveline's perfect, the gearbox is great, tick, tick, tick. In terms of the negatives, didn't love the steering wheel controls, but like Ferrari said, I think owners will eventually get used to that stuff. It's not really the end of the world. But yeah, I think this thing really nails the brief. So let me know in the comments section below, what do you reckon? Do you think Ferrari's done a good job with it? Do you think they have achieved what they set out to achieve? What do you think about the design? I'm keen for your feedback, so let me know down there. Now, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel as well. Have you bought one? What colour did you go for? Let me know down there. But until next time, take it easy.